Okay, members, it's 8:30. Apologies for absence. I haven't had any apologies for absence. Minutes to confirm the minutes of the 25th of November. Just like to thank my Vice Chair, Jim Mason, for taking the meeting. But any members have any questions about the minutes? Script, but that's about rushing. Yes, yes. So I'll just quickly, while Simon's just joined us, so good evening. Welcome to Audit Standards Committee meeting. Members are reminded we'll be using the audio visual system this evening. The meeting will be recorded. Members are physically asked to raise their hands in the usual way and indicate they wish to speak. The microphone is live when the red light displays. Please switch mobile phones to silent. I think it happened for the training we've just been on, so thank you guys. Now provide a reminder of the evacuation procedure. We've got some guests in tonight. In the event of having to evacuate the council chamber, please leave by one of the 6 emergency exits around the sides of the chamber. Please assemble at the far side of the front car park nearest park entrance. Officers will be on hand to assist persons who require any assistance. No members of the public, but public recording is allowed. I am Councillor Lee Higgins, the chair, and I will chair this meeting of the Audit Standards Committee to confirm we have the following Melton Borough Council officers in attendance tonight. We've got Dawn Garton, Director for Corporate Services, also known as the Section 151 Officer for Finance, Clive Tobin, Assistant Director for Governance and Democracy, Rachel Ashley-Corn, the Chief Internal Auditor, Carol King, it's always good to see you, Carol. Thanks for coming, our Senior Accountant, Adam Green, Senior Democratic Services and Scrutiny Officer, and in attendance is Helen Lillington from Grant Thornton, our External Auditor. We have 2 observing councillors, which there was 2, I'm sure, back. I've just done apologies for absence. Simon Orson has just arrived. So I just said about the minutes, item 2. Any comments on the minutes? So do I have a proposer? Slatherton, a seconder? Councillor Mason. All those in favour, I will abstain. I think that's going to be carried by 4, 6, 7, and yes, so and 2 abstentions from Councillor Webster and myself. Thank you. Declarations of interest. To invite members who wish to make declarations of interest in respect to the item agenda. No. Okay, thank you. Right. Item 4, External Audit Interim Annual Report 2024-2025. So this is to invite a proposal and a second on this. It's not to note this one. So Rachel, Helen, over to yourself. Thank you for attending again.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everybody. So what you have in front of you this evening is our audit findings report, which draws together all the work we've done over the course of the year relating to the financial statements 2025. So just a reminder, I have 2 responsibilities under the code. So one is to issue an audit opinion on your financial statements. Another is to give you an opinion on the value for money work that we do. So the value for money work we reported back at the last committee. And so I don't propose to dwell on that, although it's worth highlighting and remembering that there were no significant weaknesses identified in that. So that was a good piece of work there. So the main business, if you like, tonight is the findings from the financial statements audit. So what I would like to say is that I think, again, this is a really positive trajectory from the prior year. So we've completed all of our work on the in-year transactions that we plan to complete and all the work on the year-end balances, which included specifically property, plant and equipment. So those of you that here last year will remember that we were pretty much in the same position last year, although there was an issue around property, plant and equipment that we couldn't quite resolve So the opinion actually made a reference to that issue. So it's really pleasing to see that that has been resolved this year, and we are in a position to say that excluding opening balances, we are comfortable with all of the work that we have done. The opening balances phrase remains an important one, because we will still be issuing a disclaimed opinion on the accounts this year to recognise that we don't have those assurances over the opening balances from those years where you didn't have an audit. So this is quite a lengthy report. Part of the reason for that is there are lots of things I am required to report to you under auditing standards. I am not proposing to go through it page by page and in huge levels of detail. I'm going to accept that you have read it, and I will happily take questions. What I will do is just draw out some of the sort of key points that I think are important. So we have identified both adjusted and unadjusted misstatements. What is important to remember is that the totality of that is very small impact on the bottom line of the council. You will all be familiar with there are lots of ins and outs that happen on financial statements. Some impact your bottom line, others don't. The biggest adjustment we identified, which is a material adjustment, was on other land and buildings, 1.9 million. And that had arisen due to an error in the valuation report where the incorrect floor areas had been used. And that has been amended for in the final version of the accounts. So all our audit adjustments are detailed in section 6. And that's probably the other thing to just draw out is when we are thinking about reporting to you, there are different things we consider. So I've talked about materiality, and that's the level that we look at in terms of, do I think there's anything that would prevent me from giving effectively a true and fair view on the opinion? The answer to that is no. But I also have to set a level above which I report anything I find to you. Now that level is 70,000, which is quite a small number when you think about some of the numbers in your accounts. So it is inevitable that as auditors, we will find something to report to you above that level. So I think it's about trying to set it in context what you have. These are a good set of accounts. They have the amendments we've been made have the amendments we have requested, sorry, have been made. We've also made a number of recommendations along the way, and management have responded positively to those. And you've got the responses from management in the report in front of you. I wasn't proposing to say any more, but I'm clearly happy to take any questions. Thanks, Chair.
Yes, thank you very much. When I was going through your report, there was a reference to non-registration of the whole estate at Burnaby Place, Ashfordby. And I must admit, I found that a bit surprising because I don't quite understand why there's reference to that, and what the nature of the reference is, and why it is of particular significance. But I'll leave that open to you to perhaps to address generally.
Okay, so in terms of the work we do around any sort of buildings, land that are in the accounts, we have to do different sorts of testing. Part of the testing that we do is whether actually legally it is registered, and that we can see that on the land registry. That is one of the primary tests that we do. In that instance, we identified that that property wasn't. We couldn't be provided with any evidence of that. We have subsequently found some further evidence that we are confident that it is yours, but we have recommended that that is rectified. So there is no ambiguity about it.
Councillor Endicott, if I ask Adam just to note that recommendation in the minutes, would you be okay with that?
Yes, I would. I think that's a very sensible thing to do.
Just to confirm as well, whilst there's recommendations in the report made by external audit and a management response, the senior leadership team track all of those, and we have a quarterly report progress at our senior leadership team meeting as well.
Anything else? Jim? No. Councillor Atherton.
Thank you, Chair. On page 29 of our pack, which I think is page 19 of the report, one of the risks talks about the currently being debt of over 5 years old, totaling 227k. I just wonder what measures we've got in place to try and recover that, and given the age of the debt, what the likelihood is of us just writing it off.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just trying to find the amount in there, but I think that has substantially been provided for, not at 100%, but has substantially been provided for in terms of a bad debt provision. So actually the financial impact, were that all to be written off, is quite marginal. Members may recall, I think it was probably about 2 years ago, there was a big scrutiny review of all debts. And since that time, you will see in the council's performance reports that there's been a lot of strides towards either recovering or writing off a lot of that debt. One of the key areas remaining is some of the more tricky areas like overpayment of housing benefit, which is notoriously difficult to collect. And we are looking at various other means like attachment to universal credit, etc. And also working with some external companies to provide a view of which of those debts it will be worthwhile to recover. So I take the point, the likelihood is low because of the age of those debts, and that's why it has been more or less all of it provided for as a bad debt provision. But we will not write that off until I'm satisfied that we've taken all the steps that we can to make sure that that's the case.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, indeed, I did pick up the same issue that Councillor Adcock picked up. I didn't particularly like the management response on that, in that it says that it's not always been compulsory to register land. It's been compulsory for a long time. I will say that, but only when it comes to sell. So I'm quite happy with that. But it is good practice to register land. So I'm content with that. But I think I've looked at the report. I think it's a very good report, and I think it bears witness to the good work that is done by our accounts team. There's no doubt about it. So I'm more than happy with the report. But what a silver thread that runs through this report and also into the other reports later on, particularly the governance assurance, is the asset management team. There's a lot of narrative in this report regarding the asset management team, and as far as I can see, it is the only one that's a rated amber. And when you look at the narrative and read it and read it in any detail, it's not just what the asset management team may do. There's also lots of other issues around it in terms of having information provided to the auditor, etc., etc., etc. Now, I recognise that the asset management team may be understaffed. I recognise, and I'm not for one moment trying to bedevil the asset management team. But it seems to me that if you look at the audit report and then follow through the annual government statement that is down there, there are words in the government statement which looks at the fragility of the asset management team. And I just want to make that point now, because I may return to that, Chair, when we come to the annual government statement, because I think we should bear witness to having some sort of reassurance on what we're doing with the asset management team to ensure that they are equipped to do the job. And that's all I'm interested in. I'm not interested in bedeviling them. I'm interested in, are we giving them the right tools to do the job? Because it seems to me that this has been going on a long time now. I think it moved into last year, and last financial year, and also it's been looked at in this financial year. So by this time, we should have made some considerable progress. But it seems to me that some of the issues are still being are coming out there. So if I could return to that, Chair, on the government statement, I'd be obliged. Thank you.
Lydia, welcome, but you might wish to comment if that crops up later. Any other questions at all? Mike?
Now, I'll be brief, Chair, 'cause my good friend and colleague, Councillor Mason, has actually hit on the same area that I've got several pages referenced here where the same thing comes up. The one thing I wasn't very clear on in terms of the property valuations, for instance, and there was reference to incorrect floor plans being provided to the valuer, but there's also an area where it's unclear whether the valuer might have been at fault in terms of what they produced. I mean, as with Councillor Mason, I'm not, looking to get into a sort of a blame game here. It's about assurance that, having identified these issues, there is a clear plan to move forward and to resolve them. And just to cross over ahead to Ashley, it's on page 107 of the documents, and it comes up in the internal audit report as well, which refers to problems with capacity. And again, we don't want to get into specifics, around staffing issues. That's quite wrong for us to do so. But it's about having some solid assurance that, having identified these issues, we've got a clear path forward. Because I agree with Councillor Mason, it jumps out in this report as the one area that gave me concern. And I read the whole report, and it is an excellent report. Thank you.
I suppose just a couple of things in that, and you're right to pull this out. And I think if I step back, I think this is by far the most significant issue, and you'll notice it's the only high priority recommendation that we've made. To put it into context, which again I think is important for you, valuations, PPE valuations, are a particularly complicated area. It is not uncommon for auditors to find issues with PPE valuations, and because of their nature, their numbers, when we find errors, are generally big. It is something that has been going on for a good number of years. You are probably slightly further behind the curve because you had 3 years where you weren't necessarily audited. So actually, if you think about last year, it was probably the first time in a good number of years you'd been asked for floor plans and asked for the level of detail that we wanted to look at. Last year, we didn't have any resolution. This year, it has taken a long time to get there, but we have got there, and we have got there in good time to be able to say we are comfortable with the balances this year. So while you are right to draw it out, I think there is a level of progress. You are not alone in this. The changes to the code next year will mean that the way you are valuing things potentially is different, because you're allowed to not have full valuations. You're allowed to go down indexation routes, which makes it potentially more easy. Jury's out. But what is important is having the records to support anything that you do, and being able to provide that to us as auditors swiftly. And I think that's the key. So I just thought it helpful just to set it into context for you.
Yes, thank you for that. Thank you for that. And I take Councillor Brown's point on that one. Obviously, we're reminded on that. I didn't want to take this at the moment, but as the Chair of Scrutiny has said, we need some assurance. I was going to suggest that at some point that this become a scrutiny item on the scrutiny plan. So I don't think it's an audit issue. I think it's a scrutiny issue, and that would be where I would naturally progress to, Chair.
If there's no other question, I'll just wrap up, and I'm happy to propose, and then I'll look for a second. But just to say, Helen, and thank you for attending again. And I think it is really useful to have the external audit that comes to every meeting where we can ask the questions. And I know sometimes before the meetings, members, Helen's always been available for any members to talk to, and I think it is a sharp contrasted difference of when this council was not audited, and now this committee, particularly as external audits have happened, that we're just catching up with that. And I do agree with Helen. If you look at a lot of FTSE 100 companies, you see, don't they? They're a lot of their assets are their buildings and plants, and then they report to the city that they've had a large write down because someone somewhere did not look at the or assess the value of the building or the land asset that they owned, and we see a huge share price collapse. So they do tend to be big, and I think as you said, Mike, as it's being scrutinised a bit more. I think you said this when you first joined, Helen, when we first appointed you. Surety will happen, but only with time, and I think we're starting to get that more surety, and well, we'll know whatever the new future is of the council. So I'm proposing the recommendation. Anyone seconding? Councillor Brown. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you, members. Helen, I don't know if there's any other items on the agenda, but if you are staying, you're more than welcome.
Yeah, I will stay to make sure we approve the letter of rep and the AGM.
I thought that might be the case.
And I'm waiting with bated breath to get some signed copies of statements before
I did think that might be the case, but I just wanted, I know you've still got a journey. So item 5, which is the internal audit progress report. So Rachel, over to yourself.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the latest update on the delivery of this year's internal audit plan. So it's in the usual format that the committee were both familiar with, but I'll just take you through the key sections as usual. So there's a copy of the internal audit plan from page 109 of your pack this evening, with an update on the status of each of the planned assignments and the outcome of those which have been finalised. There have been some delays on some of the audits, which has been noted, but we do remain on track for delivery in line with the annual report. So since the last committee meeting, we have finalised one further audit report. So this is summarised for you in section 2.5 of the report from page 107, and does link with some of the conversation already this evening around asset management. So this audit was looking both at our own corporate assets and our asset management plan, but also our management of our leased assets as well, and the expected controls around those. So we were satisfied that an asset management plan is in place. It's been approved, along with a number of policies. We did identify that there were some policies that needed review. So an example of that was the asset disposal policy, which was due for review at the time of audit. So an action has been agreed around taking that forward and approving a new version of that. As was recognised in the last AGS, it's been noted, sorry, this evening, there have been known issues with the capacity within the team, and this had impacted on some of the controls that we expected to see within the audit. So examples of these included rent reviews, the implementation of the new asset management software, and the planned maintenance regime as well. So during 2025, a service improvement plan was put into place, and a diagnostic review was also underway at the time of this audit. So all of this is coming together to develop an action plan to take this forward. We understand processes are also being recruited to address those resourcing issues. So hopefully we will see some progress in this area. And obviously, as we've mentioned already, it is also on the annual governance statement as an area for ongoing review and action. In relation to the compliance regime, so we were looking at this around things like our safety inspections for gas safety, fire safety, electrical installations, etc., and asbestos management plans. So for corporate properties, we were happy with the evidence that we saw in the vast majority of cases, that those were being complied with in line with the council's policy and any statutory requirements as well. In terms of the leased assets, we did need to see a little bit more clarity around how these were defined within the lease agreements as to whether they sit with the council or with those who are the tenants of those properties, just to make sure we're clear on where that accountability sits and that that's then subject to monitoring going forward. And again, that's been recognised as an action to take forward to strengthen those legal agreements as well. So overall, based on some of those gaps we've identified and some of the issues around things that hadn't progressed as much as we'd expected to due to the gaps in the resourcing, we have given a moderate assurance opinion for both the control environment and the compliance at the time of the audit, and a medium organisational impact. As I say, this has come alongside the diagnostic review that was also conducted this year. We've tried to complement the action plan between the two, and I'm sure the committee will be assured on action taken forward in this area. So also within the report is an update on the implementation of actions arising from audits. So on page 113, there is an update on actions which have been implemented. So we have had 5 actions implemented since the last committee meeting. We have 20 actions which are currently overdue. That's 1 less than at this time at the last meeting. So we continue to monitor these and report it to the leadership team. So there remains 1 action in the high priority over 3 months overdue category. So that is again an exempt this evening in Appendix B to this report. So any further discussion on that would require to go into private session. Finally, Appendix 3 has our feedback results on our customer satisfaction surveys for the 2 that have been received to date as well. So I'm pleased to say that those are all positive. So I'm happy to take any questions, Chair, on the content of the report. Thank you.
I don't have any questions. Any members? No. Rachel, thank you very much for that's just for note. Item 6, the counter fraud update and whistleblowing policy. Dawn, over to yourself there. I think this is just it's not a case that we don't have one. We do have a whistleblowing policy. So this is just for Dawn to update us on it.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The committee has received updates in the past on counter fraud activities, but this report provides for the first time a self-assessment of our counter fraud prevention measures against the guidance set out in the Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act 2023. And understanding our position against this act is important due to the new offence introduced in September last year of failure to prevent fraud. We need to be able to demonstrate we have taken reasonable steps to prevent fraud, and as such, the report sets out our assessment against the 6 principles. As a result of that assessment, the Council's whistleblowing policy, which we've already had in place for a long time and has been regularly reviewed in the past, has been reviewed and updated again and is presented this evening for members' approval. Hopefully, following that approval, we'll do some communication internally with staff to refresh their awareness of the policy and understanding. And further to the report being issued as well, which is not mentioned in the report, but that was done afterwards, that we've engaged with staff representatives over the whistleblowing policy as well. I just wanted to see if Rachel wanted to add anything to that, but otherwise happy to take questions between us.
Thank you, Chair. So just to add to that, so I think it is a useful opportunity just to reflect on the Council's counter fraud arrangements. So we have worked through each principle, and I did support the Council in doing this. So I think it's reassuring that we have got some evidence against each of those, but also some areas to focus on going forward as well. It is a timely opportunity as well to review the whistleblowing policy, because it is a key part of our defence in respect of this as well. So having that arrangement in place so that people can raise any concerns gives people a route that we can then say we have done everything we can to try to prevent fraud in the organisation. So yes, I'm happy to expand on any of the points in the report as well.
Yeah, and it's just a question, because just because someone raises a concern doesn't mean that they're actually making an accusation that somebody has broken the law, but they believe, so just like looking at some of this, some of it is because the whistleblower might, well, they're not an investigating authority. They may see something in that they want to raise with any of those parties which are on page 135 of the pack and page 11 of the policy, which can be Helen as the external auditor, professional bodies, regulatory organisations, Office of Environmental Protection, whistleblowing charities, trade unions, a solicitor, or it could be our own solicitor, and obviously equally the police. But here's the whole thing of people who do whistleblow in good faith. That sometimes, the only thing I will say is it doesn't always. It's not always very clear of the protection of the whistleblower as themselves when they're raising legitimate concerns. So how is that, and how does that policy protect those people who raise those concerns? Because there are at times where concerns are raised doesn't mean that it means that the wrongdoing has actually happened, but the whistleblower has a valid reason for raising that concern.
Chair, I'm
Fine.
happy to
Yep.
respond to that. That protection is referred to in several places in the policy, particularly on part 4 of the policy, which appears on page 132 of the pack. And this is legislation that's been in place for some time. It's amended the Employment Rights Act. It basically states that any person who raises concerns of the nature covered by the policy to those bodies that which you referred to does not suffer any harassment, victimisation or dismissal. So if we were to have a report from somebody who believed something was wrong with any of the council's practices, they turn out to be mistaken about that. If they've raised it in good faith and we would take action against them, and whether we disciplined them or dismissed them, they would have an automatic right to go to the tribunals to if it was dismissal, it would automatically be unfair dismissal if it was found that we did it on the basis of that disclosure. So it's set in law, and we are reflecting that clearly in the policy. So and I think it's picked up further down. I have to find the correct page, but one of the reasons for this is that the number of this whistleblowing officers. Now let's see. Hold on. So it's page 134. So there's reference there to the whistleblowing officers who are listed. It includes myself, 151 officer, chief executive, head of internal audit, but also refers there to the assistant director of organisational development because of the importance of those statutory rights. So she is also involved in this because HR functions fall within her. So it's something which goes across the organisation and is embedded into through this policy into all our practices. So we do have very clear measures to protect employees, and that's what this policy is all about. Making sure they know they can come forward with concerns in good faith and not put themselves at risk in doing so.
And what about members if they suspected employee or act of that? Because obviously employees are there, but we're not employees as members.
The statutory protection doesn't apply in the same way for that very reason. And it is worth mentioning though, one thing that the rights in the Act apply to workers generally. It's not just employees. So if we had agency staff, others engaged on delivering services for us, they do have that protection, so that we couldn't then get at them through their employers if they were a contractor, etc. Obviously, members are in a different position, but bear in mind a member's conduct could only be taken into account through the code of conduct. If somebody was to suggest that the member had done something wrong by raising a concern, they'd also have to show that doing that was a breach of the code of conduct. So, their protection comes about in a separate way. So, as I say, that's aside from what we have to do for employees, but there is protection there.
Yeah, I think Clive's probably answered the question I was going to ask anyway. If such an event were to end up in front of the Standards Committee, how would the Standards Committee maintain that anonymity of the whistleblower?
Obviously, you know, we can't, without a particular case, it's very hard to talk generalisations on this, but anonymity is something that unfortunately isn't absolutely guaranteed in this process, and sometimes people can draw an inference because if you work in a particular area, or whether you're a member with a responsibility in a particular area, possibly only you or a small number of people would be privy to information to make those allegations, and that's reflected in the policy to say that occasionally, regardless of anonymity, it may be obvious to others who that individual is. In terms of the standards regime, obviously an allegation has to be made against a named individual. It's got to be a councillor who's in office at the time, and they've got to have been acting in the course of their role as a councillor. So that there will always be a name there. The key, I think, is to how it's handled if there was to be a hearing. The committee may decide to do it in the absence of the public. Obviously, that's fact dependent, and you know that might be a good reason because it's that individual's identity which would need protecting. So you know, it says that's a very general position, but you know, there is a process again which would protect members in that situation.
Does the council protect the member? Because it says at the 4.1 report concerns, however, council will not tolerate any form of harassment and victimisation, would take appropriate action. If the member was doing that in good faith and then suffered whatever that was, does the council, because obviously we're talking about if somebody has done something maliciously to, and then that would probably be a code of conduct where if it was in good faith, and it probably could even be true, what's there to protect? Because obviously we know what's there to protect employees or external workers. What's there to protect members?
So I'm not quite sure. Do you mean members against an allegation that's made about their behaviour, or
no? So if a member had reported something of for countering fraud, for example.
Well, so the only way that members' behaviour is regulated when they're acting in that way, legislation says, is through the code of conduct. So that would have to be a breach of the code in some way. So, you know, if you talk the example of malice, if you just, you know, I don't like that person, I'm going to allege they've done something wrong, and that was clear, then that's clearly not made in good faith, and that could be a breach of the code. It could amount to bullying and harassment in itself. So that would be a justified case where the member had a finding against them. If they made it in good faith and someone was to make a standards allegation that they had in some way breached the code, if the member shows that they did it in good faith and there was clear justification for it, then that would usually be a defence to the allegation.
Yeah, my point is, what's the safeguard for the member though? Because I get the code of conduct, and it might not even make a code of conduct if you've just made it, but it says here we'll protect employees. What's the safeguard for the member if a member saw something and was not happy?
Well, the protection for employees is from statute. So, you know, if we were to victimise an employee who's raised something, then they will have a claim against us. For a member, obviously we can't dismiss members. So if they don't get the same, they're not subject to the same sanctions. We can't discipline a member. The only thing that can be done is a code of conduct complaint. So that's the difference, where you aren't subject to the same risks of dismissal or disciplinary action. So say that the code is the only mechanism, and therefore the protection for a member is that if a whistleblowing allegation is not a breach of the code, which you know, would only likely apply where there was malice, then you know, that's their protection from any action being taken against them.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things. I mean, one is just it's an observation, in all honesty, and the document says the right things about safeguarding whistleblowers. My 37 years experience of representing employees in a range of different circumstances around whistleblowing is those fine words don't always pan out. I think it's actually a very difficult area to actually, guarantee the protection of whistleblowers in, but there is no other form of words that's better than you've put in here. I'm just flagging that up. The second thing, and again, I'm not looking to change the policy, but it did strike me when I was reading it that one of the issues, I mean, you quite rightly point out the difference between whistleblowing and a grievance and other scenarios. And I'm very familiar with the whistleblowing as a response to being disciplined. That's just an aside. I've had a few of those cases. But if somebody comes under the whistleblowing policy and it's quite clear that they've come under the wrong policy, I think that they're entitled to receive appropriate guidance. If they've got a legitimate issue, it might not be whistleblowing, but it might be a legitimate grievance. And it's just the level of assurance we can receive that someone will be not simply told it's not a whistleblowing complaint, full stop. You've come under the wrong policy. Let us give you some help and advice on the right approach to take.
No, I agree, and it's certainly something we can take back. I mean, as HR are involved in this, although internal audit through Rachel have done a lot of the work, it is something that crosses the council's functions and something we have to take into account broadly, because whistleblowing can arise in any area. HR, as I said, they are included in the whistleblowing officers in the policy, where they get an allegation direct, they would refer, they would be able to say whether it's a pot under the whistleblowing policy or some other policy. Equally, any of the other officers who are mentioned there can seek their view on that point as well. But we can probably take that back to make sure that we produce some guidance, perhaps to just to supplement it, to make sure, make clear that this isn't, it's not a this isn't the be all and end all. If you come, you come to us and raise something legitimate, but it's not covered by the policy, you're not going to receive, any harassment, discrimination, dismissal, etc. from that. We'll just take you to the right policy.
To add to that, Chair, as well, in section 3.6 of the policy, we did include that if you are unsure of the best route for reporting your concerns, you can contact internal audit. So we will receive those and advise on the best route to take as well. So we would have dismissed that, and because we are independent, hopefully that's a more comfortable route for people to go through as well.
Looking for a proposer, please. Jim, and seconder, Mike. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you, members. Item 7, statement of accounts. Carol, it's your... Oh, okay, we go to Dawn first. Okay.
Yeah, Carol's going to help with any technical questions I can't answer. So, yeah, the report presents the statement of accounts for 24-25 for approval, along with the narrative statement and a letter of representation. The draft statements were published on the 12th of June 25, and Cabinet considered the financial outturn at their meeting in July 2025. So following their approval this evening, as Helen mentioned earlier, they will be signed and published alongside the opinion when it's issued by external audit. In the covering report, we've provided a narrative on the key aspects in the accounts and the movement between years. In 24-25, it was the first year that IFRS 16 came into effect, which required all leases to be accounted for and come onto the balance sheet. The implementation of this standard did highlight that the vehicles provided via our waste contract should always have been treated as finance leases. So we've done prior period adjustments for those items. The covering report also provides a commentary on the movement in the reserves, which is also reported extensively as part of the year-end outturn and also as part of budget setting for members. Likewise, the level of borrowing compared to the CFR is confirmed as being within limit, and that's also reported on regularly through Treasury management reports. Another key area of comment relates to debtors and creditors and changes between years. However, as recognised in the report, that's at a fixed period in time, and you'll see from the number of rows of text there that the amounts that make up those totals are very varied and are set out in the report. You can also see that any cash resources have been invested to maximise interest received or to reduce interest paid. And again, we regularly report on performance in this area through the Treasury management reports to both Cabinet and Council. As you'll have heard from the auditor and is in their report, we still need to move to a position where assurance can be provided over the balances brought forward from those years where we had limited or no external audit scrutiny. And that's due to that national backlog of audit work, not due to anything locally where we continue to produce and publish our accounts on time. And we'll continue to liaise with the auditors over the timescale and practicalities of moving to full assurance over those brought forward balances. I'll leave it there, members, and Carol and I are happy to take questions.
Well, I've got one quick question because I always ask Dawn about what to invest in and all the other stuff. But are we allowed to invest in precious metals at all? You don't have to answer that anyway, but it's just one interesting is with the turbulence that's going on in the world, all central banks are now going for precious metals, and gold has gone up. But the biggest one that's gone up is silver. And it's been the biggest investment part over the last year is silver. It's gone up an amazing amount. So all those silver coins I bought when I was a lot younger I don't know whether to sell them now, but anyway, is in terms of the investments, and I know to be fair is the council tends to go for a more safer bet. I just know a lot of central banks and a lot of local governments outside of the UK seems to have gone for this whole debasing of currency hedge, which seems to have gone into precious metals at the moment. We may have missed the boat, and I'm not. This is not financial advice as well. I'll get that one out. But anyway, Bitcoin hasn't done well over the last year. But anyway, it did better when I said it 2 years ago. But any questions from members at all about the statement of accounts? Just for the public record and for any members who are sitting in the public gallery, we did have some training at 4 o'clock. So we go through training. I'd like to thank the officers for providing the training on that, and I thought the questions that there was a lot of questions about the statement of accounts, which was done in that meeting. So while there may not be the same questions that made at this meeting, there was a lot of questions about earlier, and I know Carol and Dawn was there at the time, but I thought that training was very helpful. I thought it was just interesting as well to see on page 15 of the statement of accounts, and we're still going COVID grants, which are still in the books from 2023 to 24, and now it's finally at 0. But equally, some of the grants that have come in, there seems to be some new ones. The UK SPF capital grants have been starting to get some traction here. Disabled facilities grants, obviously there's been a significant change there. A new homes bonus, which has always been threatened to always disappear. We've had quite a bit of a big increase. The only thing a lot of our residents will say was had a lot of delivery of new houses, and that's one metric that this council is really delivering on, which has been a large undertaking in the making of getting new housing online. Where that has provided a good boost to our finances. But the government always keeps threatening to remove new homes bonus on there. You'll also see on the same page leisure improvements 2024 to 2025, where credited to taxation on specific grant income, and I think that was it's been quite a very welcome boost there. If we turn the page, revenue grants receipts in advance, obviously homelessness, the government does not help the central government does not seem to help local government, and hasn't done for a long while, to tackle homelessness, but provides all the statutory responsibility and cost onto local government. So while we have a grant of that, that's nowhere near touching the sides on that. And what obviously is coming up in the future budget, I'll just get this on the record, obviously this new waste part, which probably is coming up to scrutiny as well as cabinet later. The food waste is going to put enormous pressure, which is an obligation central government is putting on local government. It's going to put a huge amount of pressure on us here, but that's for another time. This is a looking back proposal, but obviously you're seeing these coming up in the statement of accounts. So any questions while I've just been? Mike, thank you.
Just a quickie, Chair, although just as an aside, imaginative investments are interesting, but I would check out Woking Borough Council, who were very adventurous with their investments, and their financial situation is probably the worst in local government, but that's just an aside. It's a silly question, really, but it proves I did read the whole report. On page 251, there's the About Melton graphic, which then has a link in it saying, if you want more up-to-date information, click on this link for the State of Melton report. The link doesn't work, not on my report. I just wondered, why the information isn't more up-to-date, because this is going to be the public document. So in the various captions, I mean, there's a reference there to footfall between 2020 and 2019. I just wonder whether that's just been missed. But if it's going out in the public domain, it would be nice if the information was absolutely up to date.
I can take back the comment about the link not working, which is disappointing, and we can take back the comment about the footfall, etc. I think the issue is that this is a backward-looking document, obviously, for 24-25. Yeah. I mean, it may be that we've, it's either been missed or we haven't got that up-to-date information, but we can take back those points.
Yeah, over to you, Simon.
Sorry about this, and I'm sure it is stated. What was the council's income from planning applications?
Would we be able to see that in the statement of accounts? Would it be separate? I'm not sure that would be separately identified in this statement of accounts. No, because it would be merged in with other. All I can do is get that reported to you outside of the meeting, but it wouldn't be separately identifiable in there.
If you could, that'd be grand. Thank you very much.
Yeah, if you could report that to the committee, it's always, I think we were saying this a little bit in the training earlier, some of these figures, Councillor Atherton, Ziggy Atherton, because we've already got another Councillor Atherton here, was saying that some of the figures here, we started talking about some of the cattle market income. So it was hard to see where it was how it was all sort of made up from. For example, I saw Hugh Brown today, and he said, "Are you going to congratulate me for the amount of money that's been paid in from there to these accounts?" And I said, "Oh, we're signing them off today." But like you say, it's hidden a little bit, and I think that would be a useful one because it is a big driver of income to the council. If that could be reported to the committee, I think just for information, but it's a really good point. Thank you, Simon. Any other questions? No, so I'm going to ask for a proposer to sign and approve the statement of accounts. I don't know what happens if we just say we don't sign them off, because I think because they are a point in time, and this is what we were saying in the training earlier. They are a point in time, and obviously it's factual. Can't really change the past that way. So is there going to be I'm going to sign them, so I'm not going to propose or second. So Jim proposing. Anyone seconding? And Mike seconding. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you, members. And I'll be happy to sign that and for Helen as well. So I'll move to the annual governance statement. If I need to sign anything now, I'm happy to do so. But excuse me, Clive, over to yourself.
Thank you, Chair. Just a very brief introduction in relation to this item. As members will probably remember, the Council has to approve the draft annual governance statement by the end of July each year. That was considered, and following consideration, it's published by the Council. Then it is finally approved at the point when the statement of accounts are considered. So that's in light of all the work that the external auditor has done as well. Between the signing of the provisional document, the external auditor has raised a few queries in relation to the content, but these are not queries about substance. These are things for clarification. So these are things such as we've used acronyms in parts of the report, which means that for the public reading them, it doesn't make sense. So it's nothing is about substance. Nothing is substance. Nothing has changed in terms of the main findings. In fact, there's been no significant change at all. But for the benefit of members, I've got Appendix 1, a copy with those changes highlighted. And if I can just tell you the page numbers. So if you're looking at the report, the individual page numbers are 9, 12, 14, 17. 19, 26 and 27. And as I say, these are all simply typographical. There is one additional change in there, which follows a discussion that the committee had first at that meeting in July and then I believe again in November, which appears on page number, excuse me. It is on page 27, so that is the final page, which is, I'll be with you in a moment. Excuse me just a minute. So I said the page in your pack of reports is number 316. So that's just the change of the original text. But the amendment there was the one that was considered by members. And my understanding was it was agreed. So in terms of the substance of the document, very little in the way of changes. I know members may have comments or questions regarding the matters that are referred to, but just so that's just to let you know what the changes are in that document since you last saw it. So subject to any questions that you have around those changes, is probably a matter you'd want to consider, but I'm happy to take any questions you have.
I will ask Councillor Adcock, because you was at that July meeting. I know you raised one of the points that Clive's addressed there. Are you satisfied with the governance report there?
Yeah, I read through that that section this afternoon, and I must admit there is.
Oh, go on then, Jim.
Yeah, very quickly, I won't.
Sorry.
This is to Jim's show. Yeah, very quickly. This very quickly. I did say that I would return to asset management team under this item, and just finished off. Is it appropriate to make a recommendation, or I make a recommendation that scrutiny do look at that part of the, I think it's called the Corporate Property and Assets Improvement Programme, that directly relates to the asset management team as part of their work on reassurance and guidance. Would that be appropriate?
I think you could say it, but I'm going to pass to the monitoring officer. I think you can say that.
The meeting's general procedure will say that you can, a motion to refer a matter to another body can be moved without notice. So all that would need is to be seconded. And effectively that's added to the recommendation. And obviously then it's over to scrutiny to decide how it's dealt with.
I was going to, if Councillor Mason is moving that, I'm happy to second it, and as chair of scrutiny to take it on board. It won't be in this year's work cycle because we're full, but yeah, I'm very happy for that to come from this committee as a recommendation.
But Dawn, you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to remind members, I mean, obviously this is the final AGS. You had your draft last June. I think if we were in a normal kind of timetable for signing off accounts, you'd be signing off the final AGS September at the latest, possibly even earlier in July time. So whilst you've got these actions in here and the comments, bearing in mind we're now in January, progress has already been made around a lot of those actions. And again, similar to the external audit recommendations, all of these actions are tracked and reported quarterly to the strategic leadership team. So what is actually in here was the situation back in last May time, and progress has been made on those actions since that time. So just to provide that reassurance.
Okay, so we've had a proposer and recommender of adding that. Do we have to, can we just add that to the recommendation, or do we need to vote on that amendment to it?
Strictly, you do need to move that as an amendment to the recommendation. And it might be that you want to refer some very specific words regarding the substance of what's going to scrutiny, just to avoid the impression that it's the whole AGS.
I did refer to that, Clive. I did say that part of the Corporate Property and Asset Improvements Programme that directly relates to the asset management team, and I think that ties it down sufficiently. I don't know whether the chair of scrutiny would agree with that.
Okay, so based on those words, all those in favour of adding the amendment to the recommendation, all those in favour? That's unanimous. Okay, so the substantive motion is the current recommendation on the paper plus that. So who would like to move that? Okay, Jim, are you going to move the whole lot? Yeah, okay. So all those in favour? Okay, that's unanimous. So that concludes the business. Urgent business, chair to confirm. It says there is no other urgent business, but Dawn has passed me a note. And for Councillor Orson's question, kindly, Dawn has passed the information. So it's hot off the press. So planning fees received for the year is £963,000 and 48. So 963048 for that for the year. So I thought, well, we'll get that into the urgent business. So, well, members, thanks for everybody who again attended the training. And while I did note that earlier, I'd like to thank the officers for putting on that training as well, and all the members who are not part of Audit Standards who attended as well. And at 7:34, I close the meeting. Thank you.